Welcome students. So, in the previous class I was doing this third problem and we had calculated 4 variances: material cost variance, material price variance, material usage variance and material mix variance, and now I will deal with the problem of material yield variance, right, MYV, material yield variance. So, in the material yield variance, as I told you, the formula is standard rate into actual yield minus standard yield actual yield minus standard yield. So, what the formula is standard rate into actual yield minus standard yield. So, it means we do not know what is the standard rate, we have to calculate, right, because it is the standard cost of standard output divided by the net standard output. So, for this reason we have to calculate this rate. So, for calculating the rate we will have to now revise the standard. So, if you calculate this, so for this calculating the rate, standard rate, we will have to do some adjustments, some updations or some upscaling of the standards. Actual yield is given to us, that is 26.5, and standard, if you talk about the input, input is how much? Input given to this system is, or this manufacturing process, the input given is something like 30 units and the output standard expected was 27. So, actual is 26 and the standard is 27, but the standard rate, for calculation of the standard rate we will have to do something. So, let us learn how to calculate the standard rate. Standard rate. So, how we calculate the standard rate? The formula here is total cost of revised standard mix divided by total cost of revised standard mix divided by net standard output, right. So, total cost of revised standard mix, we will have to calculate the total cost of revised standard mix. So, if you calculate the total cost of revised standard mix, net standard output finally we will have to take. So, if you calculate the standard cost of revised standard mix, we will calculate for the materials, 2 materials. First is the material A, and how much it will be for the material A. You can say, how can you calculate now the say standard? You have to upscale the standard. So, how can you upscale the standard? For we are upscaling the standard now for the material A. So, in case of the material A, I will write here like that, therefore, a standard mix of how many? For a standard mix of 20 tons, A's contribution is equal to how much? 8 tons. For a standard mix of how many tons? For a standard mix of, I am writing here, for a standard mix of how many tons? 20 tons. For a standard mix of 20 tons, A's contribution is 8. Then for a standard mix of, you can say how much? For a standard mix of 30 tons, A's contribution is how much? A's contribution is going to be 8 by 20 into, is going to be 30. So, it is going to be how much? 12 tons, right. And in the similar case of the B, it is going to be how much? It is going to be 12 divided by 20 into 30. So, it is going to be the total amount is 18 tons. We have found out is the 18 tons. Now, we will find out in this case the standard cost of, once we have calculated now the quantity, the revised quantity we have calculated, that on the basis of the standard we have on the basis of the actual we have upscaled the standard and we have reworked out the proportion of the actual and the standard. So, in this case, if you calculate this variance now, for calculating the variance, total cost of revised standard mix we have to calculate now. This is the total cost of revised standard mix. Total cost of revised standard mix is going to be how much? Material A is going to be, material A 12 tons, 12, material A is going to be how much? 12 tons at the rate of rupees, material A at the rate of rupees 40 per ton, it is going to be how much? It is going to be 40 into 12 is rupees 480, and material B is going to be how much? For the material B, it is going to be 18 tons at the rate of rupees, what is the cost? Here it is 60 per ton. So, it is going to be how much? Rupees 1080? Yes. So, it is the standard cost of revised standard mix is going to be how much? This is for 30 tons. What is the cost here? It is going to be 1560 rupees 1560. So, this is the standard cost of revised standard mix. Revised standard mix is 30 tons, revised standard cost is 1560, and now we will have to find out the, so out of this we will have to find out the standard rate. So, what you have to do here is less wastage. So, wastage is at the rate of how much? 10%. So, this wastage is at the rate of 10% is going to be how much? 30 minus 3 tons. The price is going to, cost is going to remain the same. So, this is going to be how much? It is 27 tons, 3 tons. We cannot put the cost here. So, I will remove the cost, that is not, this is not. So, it is less wastage. So, it is finally going to be how much? This is going to be 27 tons and the total cost is 1560. That is the 1560. So, now it is the standard cost of revised standard mix. So, what is that? 1560 divided by net standard output is 27 units, and if you solve this, it will come out as something like, it is not evenly divisible. So, it will come out as something like 520 divided by 9. This rate will become as rupees 520 divided by 9. So, now you can easily calculate the material yield variance because all the information is available with us. This is the standard rate. So, the standard rate which is we are going to use here is rupees 520 divided by 9 into what is the actual output? 26.5. What was the standard? 27. So, if you calculate this, it comes up as 29 unfavorable. This variance works out as 29 unfavorable. Now, let us apply the check here. What was the material cost variance? It is equal to material price variance plus material usage variance, right. So, and then we have to go for the second thing is material usage variance is equal to material mix variance plus material yield variance. Okay. So, what is the material cost variance? If you look at the material cost variance, we have already calculated the material cost variance. So, how much is the material cost variance? Material cost variance here it is something like 129 adverse, 129 adverse. It is material cost variance is 129 unfavorable, and what was the material price variance? Material price variance was rupees 160 and for the one and the one for the, this is 100. So, this is what was the variance here? We calculated 60 unfavorable, and what was the material usage variance? 69 unfavorable. So, it is 129 and 60 plus 69 both are unfavorable. So, you can call it as 129 unfavorable is equal to 129 unfavorable. This is the check is confirmed. So, you can say whatever the cost you have calculated, material cost variance is equal to 129 unfavorable, and then that is equal to the sum of material price variance and material usage variance, which is 129 unfavorable. Similarly, you talk about the material usage variance. What is the material usage variance? Let us go back. If you look at the material usage variance, it is ultimately we have calculated the material usage variance. This is the mix variance we have calculated, and then it is the material usage variance. Material usage variance for everything was I think 100, this was 60. Material usage variance, if you check it, 69 adverse. This is 69 adverse, and what is this equal to? Yield and mix. So, what is the material mix variance? We have calculated the material mix variance already. This is 40 favorable, and this variance is how much? This is again the yield variance we have calculated is, your mix variance was how much, 20 unfavorable, and then plus it is 29 again unfavorable. Material mix variance is also unfavorable and the material yield variance is also unfavorable. So, both the variances being unfavorable, you can find out that 69 is equal to 69. So, it means you can confirm that all the 5 variances we have calculated till now are correct. All the 5 variances we have calculated till now are correct, and there is no doubt about that. Now, we will have to, if you go for analyzing this kind of the situation and this kind of the data, if you want to find out, you can think here about that. For example, we talk about what is the material cost variance, 129 adverse. If you look at the 129 adverse, the reason for this negative variance is that when you talk about the say input and output. So, we have already decided that our wastage will be 10%, and if you give any input, minus 10% should be the output. But actually we saw that the yield has got affected, not very say you can call it significantly, but to some extent it has got affected, and because of that reason all your variances have become negative. Mostly most of the variances are negative. So, in that case we have to find out the reason for that, why the output has come down. The expected output was 27 units, total input minus 10% wastage, but actually it has come up not very seriously, not very significantly, but it has come down by simply half of the unit. So, it is not 27 but 26.5. So, when you revise the standard everything in the light of 26.5, the actual output, standard cost also be changed, then the say your mix also we have to revise, and then we have to similarly we have to go for the yield also. So, we have to calculate the standard. So, once you revise all the standards in the light of the actual output, we found out that most of the variances are negative, unfavorable, and finally material cost variance is unfavorable. Then your finally you can say the price was also not favorable, and your usage is certainly, quantity variance is unfavorable, mix is again unfavorable, and the yield is also unfavorable. So, most of the variances have become unfavorable because we have not reduced the quantity of input as per the standard, because if the output is coming down, so your input should also come down. So, input is we are taking as standard, output is the actual. When you compare these two, so there is some effect on the production or the output, and that effect we have to find out why it has come up negatively, why the output has not been as per the standard after adjusting for the variances wastages. And once you check this reason for this, we can make sure that next time no wastages will be there, and whatever is the standard input and what is the standard expected output after adjusting the wastages, that will be available, right. So, this was the case which number 1, 2-3 things we did here. Number 1, we calculated all the 5 variances. Second problem we did was we addressed the issue of revising the standards in the light of say actual output. And third thing we learned in this case was that how to deal with the situation of say when there is a wastage of the material. So, and when the standard and actual outputs are not same and there is some variance, some wastages or some differences because of the wastages. So, how to deal with that wastage? So, now the allowed wastage is given to us already, actual may be more than that, that is why your output has got affected negatively. So, we will have to be careful for that and we will have to check it so that this negative variance never appear next time, right. So, it means all the variances have become negative because of the output getting negatively affected, which was more than the standard value. So, we understood how to upscale the standard in the light of actual output and how to adjust the issue of wastages. Now, in the fourth problem, there is one more issue we are going to deal with, which is a very quite comprehensive and interesting problem, and that issue we are going to deal with here is, that is the issue of adjusting the opening and closing stock. Issue of adjusting the opening and closing stocks, that we have not done till now. So, here what you have to do, that you have to think about that, for example, and it normally happens also in the businesses, that when we go for purchasing of the material for the say production or output in the given period of time. So, we will have to find out that say input requirement, purchase of the material to have the desired amount of the output. If we have 0 inventory with us of the raw material, then certainly for the beginning of the production we will first purchase the inventory from the market and then we will go for starting the production. which is not the case in the current situation. In this situation you are given that some opening stock is available from the previous period's purchases. First you have to use the opening stock, that is a standard rule of the inventory management, and then whatever is the shortfall you go for purchasing that material from the market, and whatever the purchases you do from the market, we are not going to make now the closing inventory 0, some inventory we have to keep for the next period also, as in this period we received some inventory of the raw material from the previous period. So for the next period also we are going to have some inventory from the current period purchases. So we have to deal with the issues of the opening stock and closing stock, and then we will have to address the issues of the say some wastages also, means in this case also I expect some wastages are also there, some issues with regard to the wastages also there. So we will have to solve this all, and then try to find out that how to calculate these variances, what are the important points and what are the relevant issues involved in this case, because it is given here. If you look at the problem, it is given here, Binaik Limited produces an article by blending two basic raw materials. One, it operates a standard costing system and the following standards have been set for the raw materials, right. So material A and B are given to us. These are the two materials which are required as a blend to come up with the standard output or maybe the actual output, and means the input is 2 and the output is 1 product, and we are given the mixes in the ratio, that is 40% and 60%, and then standard price we are given, that is per kg of the material, that is 4 and 3. Now further information given is the standard loss in processing is 15%. During April 2002 during December 2002 the company produced 1700 kgs of the finished output. The position of the stocks, the purchases of the for the month of December 2002 is as under. We can find out that you are given the materials, you are given the stocks, you are given the opening stock information, you are given the closing stock information, and you are giving the total purchases information, and on the basis of that we have to find out these variances. So you can find out that you are given the information about the month of December, and we have to deal with this issue, that is the month of December, and in this case after adjusting the opening and closing stocks we will have to find out the variances. So it means we will start working out these variances now, and we will try to find out how these variances can be calculated. So first in this case also the first variance we will be calculating is the material cost variance, and for calculating the material cost variance, again the standard cost of material minus actual cost of material, or in this case it is not material, it is mix, because we have two type of materials. So it will be now standard cost of, we will have to calculate the standard cost of standard mix. So we will have to calculate that, and then we have the actual cost of standard mix minus standard cost minus actual cost. So with the simple formula is, if you calculate the cost variances, it is the standard cost of material minus actual cost of material. So we have to calculate the first the standard cost. It is also not given to us because we have to address the issues of the say adjusting the wastages. So if you look at this problem given here is, we are giving the output input, that is in the ratio of 40 to 60%. So first question here is, what is the absolute amount of the investment? What is the absolute amount of the input, which is not given to us? We are given only the ratio. So if the 40% of A and 60% of B, so what is the total amount? Total amount of that input given, total quantity of that input given, we have to find out. You can easily find out from this information given, the standard loss in processing is 15% and the actual output is 1700 units. So you can understand easily how much will it be. It will come up as 2000. It will come up as 2000. So it means the standard loss is 15%. It means output is going to be how much finally? 85%. And what is this? 1700 is the 85% of some value, and what could be that value? You can easily find out that that value is 2000. That value is going to be 2000 because 2000 and into how much is the wastage? 15% divided by 100. So, this works out as how much? This is this is 15%. So, which we are taking 15. So, we will not put the percentage sign here. So, it means it comes up as this amount is going to be 2000 into 15 by 100. So, this works out as how much? It is 300. So, this is a wastage. So, what is expected now? The output is 1700. So, you can easily find out that is the amount of 2000 units. So, let us calculate now the standard cost of standard mix. The standard cost of standard mix is going to be for A. This is going to be how much? Standard quantity is 800 units, because the ratio is given to us, that is how much? 40%. And what is the price? Standard price is, standard quantity is 800 and standard price is 4. So, it means 3200, right. And in case of the B, it is going to be how much? In case of the B, it is going to be 1200 and multiplied by 3. So, it is going to be how much? It is 3600. So, you can find out what is the standard cost of standard mix. This is going to be 2000 kgs and this is going to be how much? 6800, 2000 kgs and 6800. So, you can easily find out that after adjusting for the wastages, standard cost of the standard mix is available with us, that is 2000 kgs is the standard input. So, standard mix is 2000 kgs and the standard cost is 6800. So, with the help of this you can easily find out the standard material cost variance. So, we have calculated the one component, that is 6800. Now, we will have to calculate the second component, and the second component is going to be standard cost of mix minus actual cost of the material used. So, now we will calculate the actual cost of the material used. So, what is that actual cost of the material used? We will have to calculate now the actual cost of material used is, we have to calculate, and now in this case it is a typical issue, it is not very simple. So, we will have to adjust now the issue of opening and the closing stocks, and then we will have to find out this cost. So, what is this cost? We have first, let us do it for the material A. If you do it for the material A, so how we have to calculate it? As I told you, we are not given the actual input in the very simpler form, we are given in the form of the opening and closing stock plus some purchases we have done. So, it means we have to adjust all the three things, and the equation is opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock, right. So, first it is the how we calculate those purchases and how we have to use it. So, opening stock is how much available with us? Opening stock available on the 1st December, it is going to be how much? This is going to be for the material A 35 kgs, and the what is the price? The opening stock price is not given to us, and in case of the B, the quantity is, opening stock of the B available is 40, and that price information is missing. What is the actual price for the opening stock? That is not given to us. We are given the purchase price, which we can calculate also if it is not given, but the standard price, actual price of the opening stock is not given to us, actual price per unit of opening stock is not given to us. So, here the standard rule is, if the actual price, purchase price of the opening stock is not given, then we assume that the actual price is equal to the standard price, and then you are given the, say, total information about the purchases. After exhausting this opening stock, as in this case, how much is the opening stock? It is 35 kgs. So, after exhausting in case of A 35 kgs of the stock, we will go for the purchases, because actual requirement for this period, this month is very high. So, remaining will be purchased. So, when you will currently purchase, you know how much we purchased and at what price we purchased. So, we know that. Similarly, in the second case, we know that in case of the B, how much was the opening stock and how much we purchased. So, we have to adjust for those opening stock plus purchases, and how much is left out, which is not used out of the purchases, that will be the closing stock. So, we will use the formula like opening stock plus purchases is equal to the opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock is equal to the cost of goods sold. So, we will have to calculate now we are calculating here is, that is the actual cost of the material used. So, if you calculate the actual cost of the material used, in this case it will come up as material A is how much? Let us do it. Material A, first how will you do it? Opening stock, I am writing in short, is how much? Opening stock 35 kgs at the rate of how much? Rupees 4 right. This is the standard rate because no rate is available. So, we are taking the standard rate. So, this works out as how much? This works out as 140 total amount, and in this case out of purchases, how much we have used this? Now, you check that out of purchases how much is used. How much purchases we did? Purchases during the month of December we did 800 kgs and 800 kgs, and in this case what is the cost we have paid is that is 3400. So, you can easily find out what is the price available here is that is 4.25. So, if you look at this price we are given out of purchases how much is used 795 kgs, because why? We have taken the closing stock given here is 5 kgs. So, it means in this case out of purchases 795 kgs at the rate of rupees 4.25 was used, at the rate of rupees 4.25 used. So, what is the total cost is this of the purchases, that part of the material which is be used is 33, this is going to be 3378.75, right. So, these are the two components. So, it means finally for the material A what is the total cost of the actual cost of the material used is going to be how much? This is going to be something like 35 total it up, then it is going to 3518.75. And similarly for the material B, if you calculate for the material B, so what we are calculating here is opening stock, how much units we have used 40 kgs, right, at the rate of rupees 3. So, this is going to be how much? 40 into 3 is 120, and out of purchases how much we have used here is 1150 kgs at the rate of rupees how much? That rate is given to us, and that rate is also actually we can calculate, and this works out as 2.50. So, if you look at this, this works out as how much? 1150 into 2.50 is going to be rupees 2875. So, this is going to be the another amount, and this is the amount how much it is 2995.00. So, you can find out what is now the total material we have used here. We have used the total material here is, you can call it as total material is total, you can say what is the material here. If you calculate the material, it is 1190 kgs, and this works out as how much? 1035 and 795. So, it means it is total amount works out as 100, and this is 300. So, 95 and sorry, it is 35. So, 35 and 795, these are the two materials we have used, and this is the 40 kgs and 1150. So, total if you take it as, it works out as 2020 kgs. Total material we have used is 2020 kgs, and what is the total cost? This plus this. So, this will come up as how much? This will come up as rupees 6513.75. So, this is called as this is the cost we have calculated is the actual cost of the material used. So, standard cost of the material used and the actual cost of the material used. So, if you find it out, you will be able to find out that what is the material cost variance. If you look at this variance, this will work out as how much? If you calculate this variance, material cost variance now is the material cost variance, this will be how much? This will be something like, say how much is the standard cost? Standard cost we have already calculated, and that is the 6800. So, material cost variance is 6800 or rupees 6800, rupees 6800 minus 6513. How much will it come out as if you calculate this variance? This cost, if you take a standard cost of mix minus actual cost of the mix. So, standard cost is 6800, actual cost is 6513. So, if you calculate this variance x as or comes out as how much 6800 minus 6513 is 286.25 favorable, 286.25 favorable. So, it is 6800 was the standard cost, actual cost has come down to 6513. So, the actual material cost variance has become 286.25, that is favorable. And this all has happened because your actual if you look at the material information given in this case, there are 2-3 issues involved here. Why your variance has become favorable? Because if you look at the say rates given here, so it means the amount which we have calculated, though the actual standard quantity was 2000 kgs and we have used the actual quantity of say 2020, but I think there is a difference in the price, and if you calculate the price difference in case of this per unit of the standard, if you calculate, though the standard is given to us that standard price is 4 rupees and 3 rupees per, but actual price I think it has come down in one of the materials and if you calculate that price given in this say per unit of the material price, if you see that actual price was 3 and the in case of the second one the actual price paid is 2.50. So, price has, though the quantity used has increased, means against the standard requirement of the 2000 kgs, actually we have used more material, that is by 20 kgs, but price per unit has come down. It may be the efficiency of the purchase department that they have been able to find out the material at a price which is much less than the standard price, because standard price was 4 and 3 rupees per kg for A and B, whereas actual price has come up as 3 and 2.5 rupees per kg. So, finally the variance has come up as positive, because though the quantity has increased, price has come down per kg and the net result is positive. So, if you calculate both these costs, both these means the standard cost is 6800 and actual cost has come up as much less, that is 6513. So, in this case 6513.75 you have to do it here. So, this is the 286.25 and this variance has become favorable. So, the remaining variance we also have to calculate for this problem, that is the material price variance, material usage variance, material mix variance and the material yield variance, that I will do and discuss in the next class. Thank you very much.